You're watching The Context. It is time for our regularly weekly segment, AI Decoded. Welcome to AI Decoded. It is that time of the week when we deep dive into the world of artificial intelligence. Last week, we looked at the advance of AI chatbots and the role they can play in disseminating false, misleading or harmful information. Tonight, we're looking at the benefits and risks posed by AI on the battlefield.
In defence, the leverage that the West will get from its advantage in technology, and specifically AI, over adversaries that may have greater mass is going to be the future of warfare.
Yeah, we'll bring you a fascinating interview tonight with one of the men building the Pentagon's most advanced systems, Palantir's European Vice President Louis Mosley. But first this from Reuters. Don't let AI control your nukes. That's according to a senior US official this week who has urged China and Russia to match declarations made by the United States and others that only humans and never artificial intelligence would make decisions on deploying nuclear weapons. And what about the battlefield itself? The Atlantic profiles Boston Dynamics, one of the most advanced robotic companies in the world. It makes robots for the US military. We'll show you a clip of that later in the programme. Also here tonight, Stephanie Hare is with us, our regular companion, AI contributor and technology author. Hello. Hello. We're going to talk about AI in the military and a system that Palantir has built. It's called Titan. Full disclosure, you once worked for Palantir, so help us understand what it does.
Right, so full disclosure, the last time I worked at Palantir was in 2017, so it's been a while and I have not personally worked on this system nor personally seen it. So it's just important to clarify that. That said, what I've read about it, what's publicly available, is really interesting. Palantir is very advanced in its use of software, and particularly it has gone very big on AI. It is integrating software with hardware to come up with what's almost like a full technology system. So using input from sensors, that's an example of hardware, into other data streams that's all going to be integrated to get like a 360-degree view of the battlefield.
Okay, we'll come back to that because we sent our North America correspondent, Sumi Somaskanda, to the Hill and Valley Forum in DC. It's a meeting of some of the most important figures in national security. And there she met Palantir's European Vice President, Louis Mosley.
What is the tool that you think is right now going to fundamentally change warfare as we know it?
So I think AI is the short answer to that. So we make operating systems for AI, both corporate and government organizations. But in defense, the leverage that the West will get from its advantage in technology, and specifically AI, over adversaries that may have greater mass is going to be the future of warfare.
It is in use right now in Ukraine. What promising opportunities have you seen there? Because we know that Ukraine has been something of an experiment as well for some of these technologies.
It is absolutely the laboratory. It is the front line. It's where we're seeing the newest and most interesting technologies get tested. And in fact, the speed at which we are learning is extraordinary. So technologies like drones, for example, and by the way, those are the essential technologies on the front line right now, they are changing every 6 to 8 weeks, fundamentally. So the design itself of the drone, the obsolescence is measured in weeks and months. And I don't think there's been an iteration like that, an innovation cycle, since the Second World War.
What is the challenge that you face in deploying some of that technology on the battlefield in Ukraine?
So the challenge is Russian countermeasures, so jamming technologies. Never underestimate the Russian capabilities, and they are learning also very, very fast. And that's what drives that cat and mouse game between the Ukrainians and the Russians.
If you look at the situation on the battlefield right now, despite the use of this technology, the battlefield has stalled, and that is for a lack of conventional weapons. Quite frankly, the Ukrainians have run out of bullets. Does that show us the limits that this type of technology has?
So obviously there are limits. In the end, it will come down to ammunition stocks, number of people, but this is where technology can also add that advantage that we discussed before. Because if you are in the Ukrainian situation where you're outnumbered, Russia is 3.5 times the population, it has far bigger manufacturing capacity, you're going to have to make each soldier count a great deal more. Each of those bullets, each of those missiles count a lot more. And that is where, with the addition of AI, and technology, you can ensure that those all go as far as they need to go.
Yeah, those efficiencies really important. Thanks to Sumi for going to do that interview for us. I mean, what he describes there is an arms race. That line that drone technology is increasing and improving every 6 to 8 weeks is terrifying. Yeah. How do you control that?
You don't control that necessarily, because what we're talking about is an iteration cycle. So Palantir developing its weaponry, all of the other defense companies doing the same, but so would Russia, so would China, so would fill in the blank of any country you want on Earth. Until we have some sort of international arms regulation for this type of weaponry, it is open playing field at the moment.
I mean, what needs to be ironed out, obviously, are the unintended consequences. How do you disengage or deactivate a system that's behaving not as you expect? And ultimately, who is overseeing that development? Is it the Department of Defense, or is there independent oversight?
I mean, that is the key question. So the US Department of Defense has AI ethics. Believe it or not, they have their AI ethics principles that anyone can read. The question is it the companies marking their own homework? Is it the US Department of Defense deciding if something is ethical or not, or someone who's independent? And at the moment, I would say it's not really anyone. Right now, it's very marketing for all parties concerned. Everyone can point to their policy, but there's no enforcement.
Okay, we'll come back to that thought. After the break, we're going to explore some of it in the company of this man.
Humanity will no longer be the only or even the most intelligent species on the planet. And everything will change. And if we don't control them, then the future will belong to them, not to us.
That is Connor Leahy, CEO of Conjecture, an AI safety company, who is warning that the AI trajectory that we're on could quickly overwhelm our ability to control it. And nowhere is that more concerning than in defence and robotics. We're joined now by Connor Leahy, who is the founder and CEO of Conjecture. Welcome to the programme. It's an AI startup that is controlling AI systems and aligning them to human values. I've got that right, have I?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. You're not a defeatist on this. You've spoken out quite a bit about the threats that are coming from AI. In fact, you went to Davos, I think, earlier this year, armed with an array of policy solutions to control the advances that we're talking about. What did you hear in that interview there with the chief executive from... or the vice president, I should say, of Palantir? What alarms you about what he was talking about?
Well, it was definitely nothing I didn't expect, let me put it that way. What we're seeing right now, I think you already said very accurately, is an arms race, both on the battlefield and off the battlefield. And in an arms race, there really is no winner, and there's only one loser, and that's humanity. What we're doing here is that we're signing over more and more control, more and more speed, more and more of our systems, our decision-making to machines. And these are machines that we do not necessarily understand. This is a very important thing to understand about AI systems. They're not like normal software. Normal software is like computer code. It's written by a human who sits down, writes lines of code of what the computer is supposed to do. And the computer does those things step by step. This is not how AI functions. AI is more like grown. You have huge piles of data, and then you use massive supercomputers to grow a program to solve your data. And this program does not look like code written by a human. It looks like a bunch of numbers, a huge pile of billions of numbers. And if you execute these numbers on your computer, you can do a bunch of amazing things. But fundamentally, to this day, even our top scientists don't really know what's inside of these systems. And is that the kind of system you want making battlefield decisions, or for that matter, civilian decisions?
I mean, picking through it, the way you described that, I've never heard it described like that. Who, in real-time battle scenarios, who is going to go through it and pick out the numbers that count?
I mean, the truth is, more and more, nobody. What's most likely going to happen, and this has already started to happen in various drone programs and the like, is that it starts out as an assistant. You know, it gives advice to the human. But then more and more, the human starts becoming a rubber stamp machine. And more, it turns out, well, the system seems to detect good enough. Just click the button. Just click the button. Just click the button. The Future of Life Institute has a fun dramatization of this, well, fun in quotation marks, called Artificial Escalation, where they go through a hypothetical scenario, where it could be when two countries are unsure of a situation. You have some signal, but you maybe not know what it is. It can come down to the second. It can come to the minute. you might not have time to make a human decision. And whoever has more AI decision making can act faster and then not even know what's going on. In 1983, there was a man named Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, a Russian soldier stationed in a bunker outside of Moscow. And one day, while he was surveilling for American nuclear first strikes, he saw a missile appear on his radar. And he had very clear orders to escalate this up the chain of command in order to trigger a nuclear counterstrike, and therefore ending the world as we know it. But he decided that this is unlikely to see a single missile. This must be a technical malfunction. And thank God, he then decided to not push the button. We could be in a very different state right now if Mr. Petrov had not been there that day.
Come back to that thought, Stephanie.
So that's a great example of what they call human in a loop decision making. And you're right that we are often reassured that we can use AI in the battlefield because we'll always keep a human in the loop. It will always be a human that makes the final decision to whatever AI recommends. But I'd be interested to hear what you think about this based on not just the Palantir interview, but everything that we've been hearing, not just in Ukraine, but in Gaza, other theaters of war. Do you think human in the loop should give us comfort?
Unfortunately, I just don't think that that is a practical political reality. The truth is that whoever is a race to the bottom, whoever has the least humans in the loop, they can act the fastest. Humans are slow. They make mistakes. They're expensive. They sleep. They get tired. If you just have a machine, we already now have simulated dogfights between fighter jets controlled by AI systems that completely destroy even our Top Gun pilots. Like even the best pilots of the U.S. military cannot hold up with how fast these systems can react. So sooner or later, whoever is the first one to ditch humans entirely is going to be the one who's going to get the superiority. And this is a very tempting thing for people to do. So I expect people to do this. As you said earlier, I was at Davos, and I run a company, so I talk to many enterprises and also civilian actors about this. And the number one thing I disappointingly hear a lot when I talk to execs at various large companies across the globe is publicly they'll say, oh, AI is to assist humans, it's to enable more creativity and all these kind of things. But I tell you, at the negotiating table, or at the sales table, the only thing they want to hear is, how many people can I lay off if I buy your product?
Let's expand that thought into this story from Reuters today, that the White House is now pushing for a non-proliferation treaty on AI, and specifically when it comes to nuclear weapons. Is that feasible?
I think many things are feasible and possible. It is a proliferation problem. I think this is an important way to think about this. This is a proliferation problem similar to how nuclear proliferation with the Soviets was a very hard diplomatic challenge. But the truth is, at some point, we as humanity have to make a choice. The choice is, do we continue this race to the bottom, give more and more to the machines until one day we're just not in control anymore? Or do we get together somehow? And I'm not saying I have a solution for this.
But in the current climate, that's unlikely, isn't it? I mean, we can't even agree on Ukraine or the matters in the Middle East. I mean, there just surely isn't the bandwidth for a conversation such as that on AI, when the suspicion is so great.
Last time a while ago, I was in the House of Lords and I spoke a bit about this topic. And a similar question was raised of like, surely, the Chinese or the Russians would not be willing to talk, it's impossible. And a venerable Lord Brown, stood up and he said, well, we did it with the Soviets during the Cold War.
Yeah.
It was hard, yes, it was very, very hard, but we're still here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's easy by any means. And we are lucky that, at least at the current moment, the West is very technologically advanced compared to its competitors on the AI sphere. AI is currently very bottlenecked by a very tangible resource, which is computing power. To build powerful AI systems, you need very, very large supercomputers. These are very big, very expensive, and are only made by like 3 companies.
So far we've talked about missiles, we've talked about fighter jets that can attack one another. What about the soldiers of the future? I want to show you something. This is from a company called Boston Dynamics. They are the most advanced robotic company in the world. They make robots for the US military, and this is their latest model. Imagine that coming towards you with a weapon. Now, the one thing you've got to remember when it comes to human intelligence is that we are mortal. The intelligence dies with us. But as you were explaining, and as this article in Forbes pointed out today, that robot is going to soak up every one of your numbers, every piece of human intelligence. It's going to grow exponentially into what?
Well, the answer is, of course, that we don't know. And I don't think that particular robot, hopefully, will be very dangerous. But if we look at where things are heading, larger and larger supercomputers, more advanced algorithms, better and better intelligence, systems that can process data in ways humans can't possibly imagine. Computers can think on orders of millions or thousands of times faster than humans. Imagine if we managed to build an AI system that is as smart as a smart human or a scientist. It runs at 1,000 times the speed of a human. Well, that means for every day, it can do 2 years of research, 2 years of thinking, 2 years of planning per day. We know this is possible, given not much more than we already have today. We already have systems that can read every book ever written in an afternoon. We already have systems that can, generate thousands of, photorealistic pictures, just like that. We already have dogfights that can, systems that can control fighter planes beyond any human capabilities. This is already possible today, and it's only speeding up. It's an exponential.
And speeding up with the wars.
And one of the things I'm thinking about while listening to you is that after the Second World War, the Allies had to come together and create a new type of war crime called crimes against humanity in order to bring to justice the Axis powers, which were then Germany and Japan, to hold them accountable. I'm wondering if we're actually going to have to update some of our war crimes legislation to take account what's going to happen when the first machine kills a human, either intentionally or accidentally. But who's responsible?
Well, that was what I was going to say. Who do you pin it on?
Manufacturer, person who programmed it. But you and I both know, this is recycled code, or many, many authors of code, the sources of the data, the government who bought it. Honestly, this is going to be an absolute nightmare for jurists.
Just on that issue, can we talk about oversight? Because the Wall Street Journal have got a piece today. They're saying that the CEOs of some of the biggest companies, so we're talking about the likes of Sam Altman at OpenAI, they're going to join this new Artificial Intelligence Safety Board to advise on regulation. Should they be on it?
Well, it depends what the purpose of this institution truly is. If its purpose is to, help these companies grade their own homework and get good government contracts, well, then it's doing its purpose properly, isn't it? But it's kind of like putting oil companies on your climate change committee, which we laugh at, but this is not uncommon. This is quite a common practice, in fact. Well, who would know more about climate than the oil execs? They have all the information, correct? And so it's a similar thing here. Well, who do you put on your AI safety panel? Well, the people knowing about AI, right? But as we've learned, such as with putting tobacco companies on your cancer research committee or putting oil companies on your climate change committee, there might be a conflict of interest here.
Okay. I think we've terrified everybody who's watching at home. I'm terrified just listening to it. I don't know about you. But shall we lighten the mood a little? Because it's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of good things out there with AI. And there's a new music app that's been previewed by Rolling Stone magazine a few weeks ago called Udio. And I'm going to introduce you to a comedian and musician, Ashley Freeze, who does a lot of stand-up. And a large part of his set is given over to music. You can tell by the guitars on the back wall. He's also a computer nut. So how are you using this app? What do you use it for?
Well, it's amazing. It's on much lower stakes than all this defense stuff, thankfully. You put in some silly lyrics, it sings you a silly song. It's a lot more fun than the rest of the stuff you've been talking about.
And you've made us a song dedicated to the BBC.
I thought it was on message, yeah.
Right, let's play it.
Oh, the BBC. The BBC is owned by you and me, funded by the license fee. If it went away, I'd get the blues. What about my BBC News? What about all those programs I adore?
My God, it's like the Director General meets Michael Bublé. How long did that take you?
It took me about 25 seconds to write a lyric and then a few presses of the button, tweaking of parameters until I got something that sounded worth sharing with someone else.
Why would this be better than sitting down with one of those guitars to create something new?
It's not. It's absolutely a party trick and a gimmick, but it is the most astonishing thing as a creator of music. It's the most astonishing thing I've ever played with. You're like opening a toy box and suddenly there's all this Harry Potter magic in there that can realize any silly idea into what feels like a produced song in a few seconds. So I got addicted to it, and it's just been so much fun making these songs.
Will we be hearing from the estate of Frank Sinatra after that wonderful tune? Because I feel that Mr. Sinatra's family will be interested.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it. Are you worried about the rights, Ashley, when you put this music together?
So I've had to take the assumption that this is ethically sourced, in that it's reviewed such a large data set that rather than deliberately impersonating one thing, it's doing what we all do, which is kind of just mimicry of an archetype rather than a specific thing. So I don't believe that is a Frank Sinatra song rewritten. I think that's just the average of lots of swing music put together. And, you know, as somebody who makes pastiche songs, it's remarkable that the machine can do it better than I can. I could probably get rid of these guitars. It's better than me.
Ashley, it's been great talking to you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the music. Will you come back and do one for AI Decoded?
Anytime you like.
I'll look forward to that. Ashley Freeze there. Actually, just before we end, I mean, Samir, who comes on sometimes, he says to me, look, our jobs are all going to change. We're not going to be creators. We're going to be curators. And you can see why that would be the case when you see what is possible.
As a researcher and writer, I'm going to challenge that and say that there's still something that's going on in my brain from reading, thinking, and the writing and editing process that I have yet to see any software system come even close to touching.
Well, I won't give up the music lessons just yet then. That's it from us this week. Thanks to Stephanie and also to Connor for coming in. Extraordinary stuff that we've learned this week. Next week, it's AI and energy. How are we going to power these immensely sophisticated systems with the limited resources we have? Join us for that same time next week.